Comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The wooden door of courtroom 7A slammed open. In swept Judge Andrew H. Stones, his black robe flaring behind him like a vulture's wings, chin high, eyes gleaming with the cold fire of arrogance. 62 years old, 23 of them spent wielding the gavel like a scepter. Stones didn't just walk into court. He claimed it. Like a monarch. Cameras didn't roll inside, but every eye was a lens, every breath baited. The case, United States versus Trump Enterprises. The charge, multi-million-dollar fraud, offshore accounts, falsified ledgers, high-stakes deceit. And today, the witness, Baron Trump. Yes, that Baron. 19. Silent. Towering. A shadow of his father's legacy, seated alone in the spotlight. He didn't fidget. Didn't flinch. Just sat chin up, eyes locked forward, as if he'd been rehearsing this role his whole life. At the prosecution table, Attorney General Pam Bondi cut a sharp silhouette. Navy suit, heels that clicked like gunfire, blonde hair slicked back in a no-nonsense coil. Her expression? Steel. Controlled. Dangerous. Journalists clogged the back rows like vultures on a wire, pens scribbling like knives. Defense lawyers whispered with smug detachment. As if they'd already won. All rise, barked the bailiff. Everyone stood. Stones didn't nod. He didn't thank. He simply sat, smoothing his robe with the flair of a man preparing for battle. His eyes scanned the courtroom, cold, calculating. Then landed on Bondi. Miss Bondi, he said with a venom-laced grin. Ready to dazzle us with tales of financial wizardry? A ripple of polite laughter from the defense table. The judge wasn't even pretending to be neutral. Bondi didn't blink. Proceed, Stones drawled, the words oozing condescension. Let's see if the Justice Department scriptwriters brought their A-game. Or are we watching another Trump family bedtime story? Oof. That stung. Even some in the gallery winced. Pam rose slowly, deliberately. Her fingers tapped once on the table before she picked up a thick folder and laid it before her like an executioner revealing a blade. Your Honor, she said, voice ringing like a war bell. What I bring is not a fairy tale. It is proof. Wire transfers. Shell companies. Ghost accounts in the Caymans and Zurich. Her eyes didn't flicker. Her tone didn't rise. Yet somehow each word slammed into the air like thunder. She glanced at Baron. Just a flick of the eyes. Protective. Calculated. Then interruption. Bondi Stones cut in, his voice calm but coiled tight, like a whip about to crack. If you came to stage a show, perhaps next time bring a ticket for Broadway. A few in the room chuckled nervously. Then he turned. Slowly. Toward Baron. The courtroom stilled. And you, Stones said, voice like a dagger dipped in honey. Baron, are you here as the reluctant heir of a crumbling dynasty, or just another college kid caught in a storm too big to understand? Gasps. Audible now? A few phones fumbled. Pens stopped scratching. Baron didn't answer. Didn't move. But something shifted in his gaze, just a flicker. Defiance? Pain? It was impossible to tell. And maybe that was the point. The judge leaned back in his chair. A smug arch to his brow. I suggest we maintain order, he said, not raising his voice. He didn't have to. His word order landed like a gavel strike. Silence followed. But beneath that silence, the room crackled. Like the moment before lightning hits. No one, not even the judge, knew that Pam Bondi was holding a secret that would detonate the courtroom in the next few minutes. And bring the mighty Judge Stones to his knees. Baron Trump didn't flinch. Tall, straight-backed, wrapped in a tailored black suit that swallowed him in shadows, he sat at the witness stand like a statue carved in quiet defiance. Not a twitch. Not a blink. The insult, heir to a crumbling empire, hung in the air like smoke. But Baron's face was unreadable. As if the words hadn't touched him. As if he trained for this exact moment. But the crowd? They heard it. Oh, they felt it. Whispers buzzed across the benches like electricity through wire. Eyebrows raised. Pens froze mid-sentence. Reporters leaned forward, hunger gleaming in their eyes. At the defense table, James Rivera, one of Trump Enterprises' lead attorneys, tilted his head with a sly, knowing grin. The judge's jab wasn't just bias. It was gold. And Welford knew exactly how to spin it later. Back at the prosecution table, Pam Bondi didn't blink. Her hand slid across the desk, tapping once, just once, on a stack of papers. A quiet signal. Her voice rang out. Controlled. Clear. Sharp enough to slice through the tension. Your Honor, she said. Mr. Trump is here as a legitimate, subpoenaed witness. He's offering direct information on financial transactions. This is not a political circus. We asked the court to focus on evidence, not personal commentary. The audience stirred, soft nods, subtle approval. Judge Stones chuckled. Not a full laugh. Just a low, dry, brittle sound that echoed off the cold walls like someone grinding glass underfoot. A legitimate witness, he repeated, lips curling in faint amusement. You say that like it means something. He turned his full gaze on Barron. Not anger. Not even disdain. Something worse, dismissal. 19-year-old, he murmured, with no business experience, no legal knowledge. Yet here you are, painted as the cornerstone of a multi-million-dollar fraud case. And we're expected to buy it? He glanced back at Bondi, his tone dipped in acid. You say that with such gravity. But forgive me, I find it laughable. A light tap of his gavel. Not loud. Not angry. Just final. The motion to present this evidence is denied, Stones said, each word dropping like a rock into still water. This courtroom, he continued, is not your press podium, Miss Bondi. And I'm no audience for symbolic theater. The room shifted. Murmurs turned into murmuring. A court clerk furrowed their brow. In the back, a reporter mouthed, did he just? To no one in particular. Welford smirked wider. But Bondi? She was ice. Unshaken, she leaned toward her assistant, Michael Gray. In a fluid, wordless exchange, he slid a thick folder into her hand. Her eyes gleamed. Just for a second. The kind of gleam that said, I expected this. Judge Stones leaned back as if enjoying the throne. Baron Trump, he said, voice casual, almost bored. Freshman at NYU, correct? No job experience. No training. No sworn responsibilities beyond student loans and lecture halls. The courtroom tensed. Even some of the reporters hesitated to write that down. Stones's gaze crawled back to Bondi. And yet you, Attorney General, proposed this young man as the linchpin of a billion-dollar fraud case? His brow arched. You really believe he carries the weight to shift this trial? Another gavel tap. Still soft. Still threatening. This court advises the Justice Department to reassess its strategy. We expect substance, not surnames. Gasps. Not subtle anymore. A woman in the gallery shook her head in disbelief. One man muttered, this is outrageous, under his breath. Bondi rose. Her voice? Like a blade unsheathed. Your Honor, she said, slicing through the rising noise, we expect this court to uphold the law, not opinions dressed as rulings. The evidence we've submitted was obtained under court order, reviewed, authenticated, and is ready for presentation. This is not about family. It's about facts. Applause nearly broke out. A few people stopped themselves just in time. Judge Stones's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, waved it as if swatting away an annoying fly. Miss Bondi, he said, calm but crackling with warning, I've presided over federal trials since before you even practiced law in the Florida Panhandle. I know a weak case when I see one. And I won't allow this courtroom to be hijacked by the politics of your office. Boom. The gavel slammed down, this time with force. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the chamber. If the prosecution continues wasting this court's time, he said coldly, I will impose sanctions. Consider that your formal notice. His eyes swept the room again, no emotion, no regret. Just power. This wasn't posturing. This wasn't theater. It was rule. But in Bondi's steady hand, that glint of confidence still burned. And in the folder beneath her palm? Was the match. Judge Andrew H. Stones sat high on the bench like a storm about to break. His fingers, calm, almost lazy, tapped the dark oak rhythmically, but there was menace in every tap. A silent countdown. His eyes swept toward the prosecution table. Slow. Measured. I see. Miss Bondi, he said, voice clipped and cool, you may proceed. Then pause. A faint twitch at the corner of his mouth. A smirk? Applause, he added dryly, not looking up from the desk. Unless, of course, the Justice Department is still polishing the script for the next act of the Trump show. A few gasps. One audible chuckle from the defense table. Pam Bondi rose slowly, each movement composed like a deliberate chess move. Her face betrayed nothing. No twitch. No irritation. Just ironclad calm. She'd been here before, under the lights, in the fire, against louder men. Your Honor, she began, voice like tempered steel, we submit additional documentation, financial records tracing foreign transactions directly linked to Trump enterprises. These were obtained under federal court order and verified by forensic accountants. Her hand pressed lightly against the thick file, clean, crisp, lethal in its silence. This wasn't theater. This was ammunition. But Judge Stones raised a hand, not fast, not loud, but final. Additional documentation, he repeated, each syllable carved like granite. Yes. More paper. That's what we need. Perhaps you'll bury the jury in it next. The sarcasm was acid. And it stung. His gaze slid to Barron. Still at the witness stand. Still silent. Still steel. His shoulders square, expression neutral. But his eyes? They were locked on Stone's. Calm. Calculated. Stone's voice cut through again, deliberate and scorn-laced. Mr. Trump, he said, you're sitting here as a so-called key witness in a case with national implications. But this court doesn't weigh public image. It weighs merit. And yours, young man, is paper-thin. A tap of the gavel. Not hard, but sharp enough to ring like a warning shot. This court, Stone's declared, is not a platform for speeches or family redemption arcs. We are here for the truth untainted, unperformed. Barron didn't move. He gave a subtle nod. That was all. But even that, just that, sent murmurs rustling through the gallery like wind across dry leaves. Reporters scribbled madly. Phones vibrated in coat pockets. The atmosphere was thick. Charged. Something was about to snap. James Rivera leaned to whisper something to a colleague, grinning like a man watching his opponents fall into their own trap. Pam Bondi didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, voice rising, not in volume but in presence. Your Honor, she said, steady and cutting, this witness is providing material testimony on the flow of capital between shell corporations. We are not asking the court to validate his name. We're asking it to consider the facts. She locked eyes with Stone's. And just for a moment, it was war. Stone's laughed. A sharp, cold bark of disdain. Facts? You want this court to weigh facts delivered by a 19-year-old boy who's spent more time being photographed at golf clubs than in classrooms? He leaned forward, almost giddy with disdain. You want fairness? Then don't send me a teenager dressed in his father's shadow. Then, crack. He slammed the gavel down. Hard. The sound boomed across the chamber. A court clerk startled so violently that a glass of water tipped and shattered on the floor. Gasps. One person whispered, he's lost it. Miss Bondi, Stone's barked, still hot with contempt, your motion is denied. I will not allow this courtroom to become a stage for you and your witness to act out some righteous family drama. The gallery buzzed. A wave of disbelief. People turned to each other. This wasn't a trial anymore. It was an execution with no due process. Pam Bondi stood motionless. Then, without hesitation, she stepped closer to the bench. Your Honor, she said, her voice now pure ice, we request your denial be entered into the record, including your remarks, particularly those personally attacking the witness. Your statements are inconsistent with judicial conduct and violate procedural standards of impartiality. No yelling. No dramatics. Just a blade pressed to the rules. Her words landed like a hammer on a steel anvil. Judge Stone's paused. Just for a beat? Then waved a hand, slow, irritated, as if brushing off smoke. Recorded, he said flatly, the disgust barely veiled now. Noted. That the prosecution insists on wasting this court's time with a witness who has no material depth and no legal grounding. He turned again to Barron, and his voice shifted. Not personal now. Just weighty. Cold. Mr. Trump, he said, low and deliberate, understand this, you are not here for a photo op. You are under oath. And the weight of this case, of what it means, of what you represent, does not care about your age, your name, or your pedigree. Silence. Stone's leaned back. The gavel rested quietly by his hand. But no one doubted he'd slam it again if pushed. And in the gallery, the air was electric. People weren't just watching a trial anymore. They were watching the system strain and maybe, just maybe, begin to crack. For one breathless second, the courtroom stood still. No shuffling. No scribbling. No whispers. Just the echo of silence, thick as smoke. Then crackling murmurs. But this time, they weren't careful. They were split. Divided. Hot with tension. At the defense table, Trump's lawyers leaned in fast, voices low, eyes flicking toward the prosecution like prey sensing a predator had just changed tactics. But Pam Bondi didn't move. She sat calm. Composed. Almost serene. A whispered exchange with Michael Gray, her senior legal advisor. No panic. No hurry. Another file, thick, blue, and cold as truth, was placed gently on the table before her. A new front in the war. Not a rebuttal. A strategy. Quietly constructed. Patiently deployed. Bondi's lips curled into a faint smile. Not smug. Certain. From the bench, Judge Stone straightened. He felt it, the shift. The attention in the room had turned. Off him. On her. His voice came low, trying to reclaim the gravity. Miss Bondi, he said, each syllable carefully loaded, if you believe this witness strengthens your case. I fear you underestimate the seriousness of these proceedings. He paused. Dramatic. Intentional. But the weight didn't land the way it once had. I've seen these tactics before, he said, softer now, like a man pulling from memory. Since your Florida days. And they've never ended well. Crack. The gavel struck like a gunshot, louder than before. The kind of sound meant to end arguments, not start them. Then his eyes found Baron Trump once again. And something flickered. Confusion? Resentment? Or the realization that the boy hadn't broken once. Mr. Trump, he said, not cruel, just weary. You sit here with the same obligations as any sworn witness. But let me be clear, this court cannot and will not allow its foundation to rest on youth, family, or legacy. Legal weight is earned, not inherited. He turned to the gallery. His voice rose, not loud, but firm. This courtroom will uphold law. Only law. Not fame. Not fear. Not fiction. He stood, robe billowing like smoke behind him. 50-minute recess, he declared, already turning. But as he swept away, confident in his control, Pam Bondi did not move. She didn't blink. She simply waited. And when the gavel dropped to signal the trial's return and Judge Stones retook the bench, calm restored, posture perfect, it was not the same room. Because now he was the one under the microscope. A different silence blanketed the room. Heavy. Watchful. Waiting. Judge Stones adjusted his robe, sat straight, tapped his fingers once. And again. And again. Steadying himself. Trying to reassert gravity. But the rhythm was off. Everyone heard it. Bondi, he said, voice smooth but tight. Does the Justice Department have anything new to present? He tried to sound unfazed. In control? He wasn't. Pam Bondi rose. Her voice didn't waver. Didn't rise. It struck. Your Honor, she began, her tone clinical, precise. Before we proceed, the Department of Justice formally requests that you recuse yourself from this case. Effective immediately. Boom. Not sound. Just silence. Shattering silence. A gasp, sharp and real, broke from the gallery before vanishing into stunned stillness. Bondi continued, unshaken. This request, she said, sliding the blue file forward across the polished wood, is based on documented evidence detailing potential bias, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and financial transactions between you and Trump Enterprises. It wasn't accusation. It was surgery. Cold. Clean. Surgical. Reporters froze mid-word. One even stopped recording just to listen. The file came to rest before the clerk like a detonator. And the courtroom turned to Judge Stones. He didn't move. But he'd stopped tapping. His fingers, motionless, curled together, now clasped in front of him. The posture of someone who knows the temperature has changed. Baron Trump lifted his gaze for the first time. Calm. Silent. His expression unchanged. But his eyes now glinted, not with pride, but awareness. The battlefield had shifted. Judge Stone's face steady, but his neck flushed a dark red, opened his mouth. Slam. The gavel struck. Hard. Furious. Uncontrolled. The court clerk jumped. A glass rattled. Someone whispered, he's losing it. And in that single echo reverberating through the chamber like thunder, one truth became undeniable. The judge was no longer in control. Outrageous. The word ripped from Judge Andrew H. Stones like a cannon blast, his voice trembling with fury, less thunder now, more desperation. You dare stand in federal court and slander me? His eyes flared, his fingers curled around the edge of the bench. On what grounds does the Justice Department make this baseless request? Pam Bondi didn't blink. She didn't flinch. With the poise of a general on the battlefield, she gave a subtle nod to Michael Gray. A stack of documents, thick, sharp-edged, heavy with consequence, was placed directly on the judge's bench. Bondi's voice sliced through the chaos like a tempered blade. Your Honor, she said, calm and cold, these files document 17 financial transactions between Meridian Holdings, a company controlled by your brother-in-law, and a Trump Enterprises subsidiary. 17. Over 3 years. Totaling $12 million. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. These transactions, she continued, align precisely with your favorable rulings on at least 4 separate Trump-linked corporate cases. Stone froze. His hand hovered over the documents. But he didn't touch them. He couldn't. They might as well have been lit dynamite. At the defense table, James Rivera's whispering turned frantic. The once smug attorneys beside him exchanged nervous glances, their polished confidence melting in real time. A flash, click cut across the room. A reporter had just snapped a photo. History was being made. And someone was leaking it already. Bondi didn't let up. We also have sworn testimony from 3 former court clerks, she said, pacing slowly, her presence devouring the courtroom. They confirm that you've expressed personal animus toward the Trump family stemming from a 2019 conflict involving your former associate, Joseph Wright. Her eyes narrowed. They're prepared to testify. Under oath. The courtroom exploded in murmurs, not whispers. Outrage. Disbelief. Shock. One woman gasped audibly. A man whispered, "He's finished." Judge Stones lurched forward, color draining from his face. "Miss Bondi," he barked, but the force was gone. "This is a filthy conspiracy." But it was too late. He sounded small. Bondi delivered the killing stroke without flinching. More critically, she said, eyes fixed on him, "We possess a recording captured at the Cypress Club Gala where you assured Anthony Baker, CEO of Trump Enterprises, that this case would never reach a jury." Boom. The courtroom erupted. One spectator shot to their feet. "You've got to be kidding me." Before a court officer shoved him back into his seat. Reporters didn't write. They typed. Phones buzzed. The leak was already going viral. This wasn't just news, it was an earthquake. At the witness stand, Barron Trump finally reacted. Just a flicker, a faint smile. Subtle, but unmistakable. He'd seen this coming. Stone smashed the gavel. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Silence," he shouted. But the command rang hollow. "Your request is denied. I will consider sanctioning the Justice Department for contempt of court." But Bondi wasn't finished. She stepped forward closer now. Her voice was ice. "Your Honor," she said, "every syllable an indictment. The Justice Department has already filed this evidence with the Judicial Conduct Committee. Copies were sent to the District Chief Judge this morning. The Office of Public Integrity has been alerted." She paused. "And an emergency appeal has been submitted to the appellate court. They're reviewing it as we speak." The room held its breath. Stone's knuckles blanched white as he gripped the gavel like a drowning man clutches driftwood. "You're going too far, Miss Bondi," he hissed, venom-laced with fear. Then, desperate for an easier fight, he turned on the witness. "And you, Mr. Trump," he spat, "do you think you can sit there and let the Justice Department use you as a puppet? You're pathetic." Bondi moved instantly, cutting the moment in half. "Your Honor," she said, voice ringing with finality, "the Justice Department does not play games. We are here to uphold justice. And justice demands a judge untainted by corruption." Reeves stepped forward with another document. Bondi pointed. "We now renew our request for your immediate recusal, or the appellate court will decide for you." Judge Stones sat motionless. A former titan now buried beneath the weight of his own gavel. "Miss Bondi," he said, voice strained, "does the Justice Department have anything else to say?" She straightened. Eyes locked on his. Behind her, her team stood with files in hand, unshaken. "A wall of justice." "Your Honor," Bondi said, voice echoing like a war drum, "before you issue any ruling, the Justice Department submits final evidence of your breach of judicial integrity." Stone lifted his hand to silence her. Too late. Reeves laid down a final slim file like a dagger placed on an altar. "This document," Bondi said, deadly calm, "shows 5 payments from Trump Enterprises to Caribbean Holdings, a shell company linked to Meridian Holdings. Your brother-in-law's company. $8 million, Your Honor. All paid just days before each of your 5 most significant rulings in favor of Trump-linked entities." The file sat still. The silence was absolute. Judge Stones didn't reach for the gavel this time. Because even he understood. The gavel was no longer his to hold. Time stopped. The courtroom, once tense, then boiling, was now frozen, caught in the grip of something bigger than drama. Bigger than law. A single reporter's phone slipped, crashing to the floor with a dull thud that rang out like gunfire. At the witness stand, Barron Trump didn't flinch. His posture still proud, still silent. But in his eyes, a glint. Not triumph. Not relief. Just understanding. He had seen this coming. At the defense table, James Rivera and the Trump Enterprises team looked like they'd seen a ghost. Their whispers weren't confident anymore, they were frantic. And at the bench, Judge Andrew H. Stone, trembling, flushed, and unraveling, tried one last time to claw back control. "Miss Bondi," he roared, voice cracking. "This is blatant defamation. Lies. Fabrications." He slammed the gavel. But the sound was thin. Hollow. A wooden cry for help. Desperate, he swung toward Barron. "And you, Mr. Trump?" he spat. "Who do you think you are in this farce? A pawn? A puppet? A child dressed up to make the Justice Department look competent?" Barron said nothing. He didn't have to. Because the door at the back of the courtroom burst open. 3 FBI agents entered with chilling calm. Their suits sharp. Their movements clean. No drama. Just purpose. The lead agent stepped forward, badge gleaming under the courtroom lights. "Judge Andrew H. Stone," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "we are with the FBI's Anti-Corruption Division. You are under arrest for violations of Title 18, U.S. Code, judicial corruption, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Gasps. Cries. Murmurs bursting like a fireball. The audience broke like a wave crashing into marble. Stone stood. Or tried to. He knocked over the gavel. It rolled. Useless. Silent. Forgotten. You have no authority, he shrieked. This is my courtroom. But the lead agent calmly held up the arrest warrant. Another moved behind him, swift, practiced, and in one stunning, surreal moment, the handcuffs snapped shut. Click. That was the real verdict. Bondi didn't move. She didn't blink. She stood like justice personified, unshaken, her voice low and firm. Mr. Stone, she said, the Justice Department doesn't take down people. It presents evidence. That evidence has now spoken. From the witness stand, Barron gave a slight nod. Small. Subtle. But heavy with meaning. The reporters moved like a swarm, typing, scribbling, recording. Some broke protocol, lifting phones under the desk, already live tweeting the scene that would detonate across every screen in the country. The defense team was silent. A woman in the gallery whispered she had him trapped from the start. Stone stumbled as he was led down from the bench. His robe dragged across the marble steps like a fallen flag. No longer majestic, just cloth. Just failure. He stopped briefly, eyes burning, and hissed through clenched teeth. You'll regret this. Bondi met his glare with steel. You made your choice, Mr. Stone, she said, her voice like a closing door. The moment you decided you were above the law. The agents pushed open the door. The robe snagged briefly on the frame before sliding through like the last thread of a lie. Then silence. But not peace. The courtroom trembled. The storm had passed, but the air was still electric. A journalist whispered, breathless, did that just happen? Court staff, once stoic, frozen, were exchanging glances, their faces cracked open in disbelief. One elderly man stood suddenly, hand clutched to his chest. A court officer hurried to assist. Bondi turned calmly to her team. Prepare for the new judge, she said. Michael Gray nodded, stacking the blue files like they were weapons, not paper. His hands shook, but not from fear. From adrenaline. Bondi swept her eyes across the chaos, letting it sink in. Every whisper, every stare, every inch of this room would remember her. Not as a politician. Not as a lawyer. As the woman who brought down the bench. Barron Trump stepped down from the stand. His tall frame passed through a side door, quiet and ghost-like. Yet his presence still hung in the room like a final note that hadn't finished echoing. In the reporter's corner, a curly-haired journalist leaned toward a colleague. He knew, they whispered. He knew this would happen. The colleague didn't look up, still typing, fast, furious. On screen, a 12-second clip was already going viral. Judge Stone, red-faced, cuffed, shouting. Headlines were erupting across every feed. Judge Stone arrested in courtroom meltdown. FBI seizes corrupt federal judge in Trump fraud case. AG Bondi shocks nation, delivers historic courtroom takedown. At the defense table, Welford was pale, his voice dry. We need a meeting, he muttered, eyes flicking nervously around. Now. Another lawyer leaned in, whispering fast. Without Stone, he said grimly, we've lost everything. And in that moment, between the shuffle of papers and the hum of phones, the real trial began. The one that no corrupt judge could suppress. They looked at Pam Bondi. Not just with fear. Not just with respect. With a dawning realization. She wasn't just the attorney general. She was a force of reckoning. And they, Welford, the defense team, the court staff, even some in the gallery, knew it. This wasn't improvisation. She'd planned this. All of it. In the gallery, the air buzzed like a hive struck by lightning. A young woman with glasses leaned toward her friend, wide-eyed. Bondi planned this from the start, didn't she? Her friend nodded, typing into her phone without looking. Just watched a judge get cuffed. AG Bondi is unreal. Court staff tried to restore order, calling out, waving their hands, but it was like shouting into a hurricane. The courtroom had transformed into a storm of shock, awe, and unraveling decorum. Outside the courtroom, chaos erupted. Corridors packed shoulder to shoulder with reporters. Fox, MSNBC, Reuters, BuzzFeed, local affiliates. All shouting, live streaming, talking over each other in breathless voices. One NBC journalist, shirt clinging to his back with sweat, yelled into his phone. We've got the clip. The video's going viral, air it now. Someone nearby whispered, this is Trump's script, isn't it? But nobody looked away. Nobody dared miss a second. Bondi emerged from the courtroom, flanked by Reeves and her legal team. A wall of microphones awaited her. Reporters lunged. But she didn't flinch. She lifted one hand calm, commanding, and spoke. Justice has been served. The Justice Department will continue its work. That was it. 11 words. No more. Yet it erupted across media like a flare shot into the sky. Justice has been served. Bondi makes history. Bondi breaks her silence, her 11-word earthquake. The AG who brought down a judge. Inside the courtroom, a staffer near the door paused, gave Bondi a nod. Quiet. Almost reverent. As if saluting not a politician, but a legend. And then the internet did what it does best. The 12-second clip of Stone in handcuffs, complete with dramatic music and bold captions like, "Don't mess with AG Bondi," circulated like wildfire. Memes. Edits. Reactions. Debates. Bondi just schooled the entire judicial system. This is Trump's revenge, but it's beautifully executed. Is she the new face of justice, or just the Trump machine in heels? #Stonefall trended at #1. But opinion didn't matter. Impact did. Across the country, across courtrooms, offices, classrooms, living rooms, the shock was setting in. A federal judge had been cuffed in his own courtroom. And Pam Bondi had pulled the trigger with evidence, precision, and nerve. In the days that followed, the ripple became a roar. Cable news called it a seismic moment. Sunday panels dissected every frame. Congress lit up with hearings and outrage. Coffee shops in Des Moines and diners in Tallahassee echoed with the same question. Did you see what Bondi did? Federal judges began quietly reviewing their rulings with new caution. Whispers circled through courthouses from Boston to Boise. Stone's shadow had fallen long. And Bondi? She didn't gloat. In a Justice Department statement, she said it plainly. The integrity of the judiciary is inviolable. The Stone case reminds us, no one is above the law. Her words became a rallying cry. #JusticeWins surged. #Stonefall dominated. And in the halls of the Senate, proposals poured in. Mandatory financial disclosures for federal judges. Real-time auditing of judicial conflicts. Ethics training no longer optional but enforced. In law schools from Georgetown to UCLA, professors threw out their syllabi. In a Columbia University lecture, streamed by thousands, one professor said, "This wasn't just a takedown. It was a course correction. The system bent and someone chose to make it snap back." Students debated in lecture halls and dorm rooms. Was it justice or politics? Is Bondi a hero or just Trump's weapon? But no one denied the truth. A line had been crossed and dragged back into place. The Stone case was no longer just a trial. It was a reckoning. And at the center of it stood Pam Bondi, framed in every camera flash and every headline. Not as a politician, not as a partisan, but as the one who said, "Enough." The fall of Judge Andrew H. Stone didn't just rock the courtroom. It reverberated through every marble corridor of justice, every headline, every private judicial meeting behind closed doors. As the days passed, the truth unraveled, and every new detail landed like a blow to the system. Justice Department records revealed Meridian Holdings wasn't just linked to Trump enterprises. It was a financial spider web feeding offshore shell companies in the Caymans, Zurich, and the Virgin Islands. Stone had been part of it, not just a bystander. A player. Testimony from 3 former clerks painted a damning portrait. He called the Trump family enemies of financial order. He said the courtroom was his kingdom. He laughed when he said the jury would never see the case. And then the recording. From the ornate halls of the Cypress Club, Stone's voice leaked across every screen in America. "Don't worry about the jury. I'll handle the case." It looped endlessly. CNN ran it every hour. Podcasts dissected every word. TikToks reenacted it. Twitter tore it apart. Public outrage turned into legislative fire. The trial, now officially United States versus Trump Enterprises, resumed under Judge Elena Michaeles, a woman known across judicial circuits as a no-nonsense centrist with a spine of steel. Where Stone had smirked, she listened. Where he thundered, she questioned. And Pam Bondi? She was still watching. Still guiding. In the defense's war room, James Rivera tried to pick up the pieces. Gone were the smirks and easy confidence. A source from inside leaked that Welford had been holding 12-hour emergency meetings, desperately trying to rebuild a strategy without their king on the board. And Barron Trump? He vanished back to NYU, into the swirl of city life and campus anonymity. But the story followed him. How could it not? News outlets dubbed him the silent witness. Photos of him leaving courtroom 7A appeared everywhere, always with the same haunting caption. Barron didn't need to speak. Bondi spoke for him. True to form, he said nothing. No press. No interviews. Just quiet dignity. Letting the moment speak louder than any microphone could. But the echo of his silence? It was deafening. In Congress, the ripple became a tidal wave. Lawmakers seized the moment. Some with sincerity, others with opportunism. If Pam Bondi can take down a corrupt federal judge, we have a duty to make sure no one ever becomes the next Andrew Stone. From Capitol Hill to the Supreme Court's back chambers, the whispers turn to proposals. Real-time financial disclosures, randomized case audits, mandatory ethics reviews every fiscal year. In courtrooms from Miami to Seattle, judges moved with visible restraint. Decisions were double-checked. Recusals increased. Transparency policies were quietly updated. At a judicial ethics forum in Atlanta, one judge stood at the mic and simply said, "The Stone case is a wake-up call. It reminded us that robes do not grant immunity." Meanwhile, at the Justice Department, the woman behind it all moved quietly, steadily, through the halls of history. In her office, under the dim glow of dusk, Pam Bondi sat in silence. Outside, Washington fell into shadow. Inside, her desk was lit only by a desk lamp and a glowing screen. In front of her, a worn coffee mug, a half-marked policy draft, and the thick file marked, United States versus Trump Enterprises. She scribbled notes in firm, controlled handwriting. Reforms, pellet updates, judicial training initiatives. Every pen stroke a reminder. Justice is maintenance. This wasn't a Josephy to celebrate. It was a proof of concept that the system could correct itself if someone dared to stand where others bowed. Her mind wandered briefly to Barron, the teenager who never lashed out, never cracked under Stone's barrage, who sat tall while others conspired to collapse the case around him. Did he know what he had done? That his silence, his presence, had helped shake a system? Bondi sighed, rising slowly from her chair. There was no time for reflection. Only work. Always more work. As she reached for her briefcase, her eyes scanned the window one last time. The city twinkled beneath her, unaware it had shifted just a little. Because someone had stood up, she turned out the light. In the hallway, her silhouette cast long in the fluorescent glow, she walked toward a meeting with Judge Michaeles, where the Trump Enterprises case awaited its next chapter. Her steps were steady, her presence undeniable, because justice isn't a destination. It's an unending journey, and Bondi wasn't finished. She was just getting started. As the door to her office clicked shut, only one thing remained on her desk, a sealed folder.